The transport ship Harmony emerged from hyperspace with a gentle shudder that ran through its hull. Captain Ben Torres stood at the observation deck, watching the Zephyrian homeworld grow larger in the viewport. The planet looked like a massive blue-green jewel floating in space, with 3 silver moons circling it in perfect formation. "First time seeing Zephyria Prime?" asked Ambassador Liu, the head of the diplomatic team. She joined Ben at the window, her formal robes already prepared for the meeting ahead. "Yes, Mom," Ben replied. "The reports don't do it justice. Wait until you see their cities. The Zephyrians build with living crystal. Everything grows rather than gets constructed." Liu checked her tablet. "Remember, Captain Torres, this mission is critical. Earth needs this trade agreement. The Zephyrians have technology that could advance our civilization by centuries." Ben nodded. At 32, he was young for a captain, but his engineering background and experience with alien cultures had made him valuable to the diplomatic corps. He had worked on mining stations throughout the outer systems and had dealt with dozens of alien species. Most importantly, he understood how to fix things when they broke down, which happened often during first contact situations. The Harmony docked at the orbital station above Zephyria Prime. Ben felt the familiar weight shift as artificial gravity adjusted to match local standards. Through the airlock came their escorts, to tall Zephyrians with skin that looked like polished blue stone marked with silver patterns. "Welcome to Zephyria Prime." The first escort said in perfect English, "I am Commander Vel. The High Region awaits your arrival." The Zephyrians were impressive beings. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs and faces that seemed carved from precious stone. Their eyes glowed with a soft inner light, and when they moved, their skin caught the light in ways that seemed almost magical. The shuttle ride to the surface took 30 minutes. Ben watched the crystalline cities pass below them, towers that spiraled up from the ground like frozen waterfalls. The buildings pulsed with gentle light, and he could see the organic curves that marked Zephyrian architecture. The palace is ahead, Commander Vel announced. Ben saw it before Vel finished speaking. The royal palace floated above the capital city, held aloft by technology that Ben's engineering mind longed to understand. Streams of water cascaded from its edges, falling hundreds of feet to the gardens below. The entire structure seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal. They landed on a platform that extended from the palace's base. As Ben stepped off the shuttle, he felt the slight disorientation that came from standing on something that should be falling, but wasn't. The artificial gravity was perfect, but his mind still insisted he was standing on something impossible. "The High Regent will see you in 1 hour," Commander Vel explained as they walked through corridors filled with flowing water and growing crystal formations. "First, you will be presented to the court during the afternoon gathering. This allows our nobles to meet you before formal negotiations begin." Ambassador Liu looked nervous. "Is there anything specific we should know about court protocol?" "Be yourselves," Commander Vel said simply. The High Regent values honesty above ceremony. They were given quarters in the guest wing, rooms that seemed grown rather than built. Ben's room had walls of pale blue crystal that let in soft light from outside. Water flowed down one wall in patterns that constantly changed, creating a soothing sound. Ben changed into his formal uniform and checked his appearance. His brown hair was neat, his captain's bars polished. At 6 feet tall, he was short by Zephyrian standards, but tall enough to command respect. His hands showed calluses from years of engineering work, and his green eyes held the steady calm that had helped him through many difficult situations. The court gathering was held in a vast hall with a ceiling that opened to the sky. Hundreds of Zephyrians moved through the space, their crystalline skin creating patterns of light as they socialized. Ben stayed close to Ambassador Liu and the other human diplomats, trying not to stare at the magnificent beings around them. The royal family approaches. Commander Vel whispered. Ben turned to see the High Regent, a massive Zephyrian whose silver markings covered his entire body like flowing rivers. Beside him walked several other royals, including a younger female whose grace caught Ben's attention. Immediately, honored guests from Earth, the High Regent's voice carried clearly across the hall. "I am High Regent Thane. Welcome to our world." Ambassador Liu stepped forward. Your Highness, we are grateful for your welcome. I am Ambassador Liu, and this is Captain Torres and our diplomatic team. Ben bowed as he had been taught. When he looked up, he noticed that one of the royal attendants had stopped moving. She stood about 20 feet away, her silver-marked face turned directly toward him. Her posture suggested surprise, maybe even shock. The formal introductions continued, but Ben found his attention drawn to the female's Ephraim. She was tall and elegant like all her people, but something about her seemed familiar. Her silver markings formed intricate patterns across her blue skin, and her eyes held an intelligence that reminded him of something. This is Princess Kira. My daughter, High Regent Thane said, gesturing to the young female who had been staring. Princess Kira stepped forward, but Ben noticed a hesitation in her movement. When she spoke, her voice carried a slight tremor. Welcome to Zephyria Prime, Captain Torres. She paused, and Ben saw her breathing pattern change. Have we met before? The question surprised him. I don't believe so, Your Highness. This is my first visit to your world. But even as he said it, something nagged at Ben's memory. The princess's voice, her posture, something about her seemed familiar in a way he couldn't explain. The gathering continued for another hour. Ben spoke with various nobles and government officials, discussing Earth's desire for trade and cooperation. The Zephyrians asked intelligent questions about human culture and technology. But Ben noticed an underlying skepticism in their voices. Your species is young. One noble commented. Many young species promise friendship but seek only advantage. We understand your caution. Ben replied. Trust must be earned. Throughout the evening, Ben caught glimpses of Princess Kira watching him from across the hall. Each time their eyes met, she looked away quickly, as if studying him made her uncomfortable. After the gathering ended, Ben walked through the palace gardens with Ambassador Liu and their team. The crystalline flowers glowed softly in the evening light, and the sound of falling water created a peaceful atmosphere. I think that went well, Ambassador Liu said. Though I sense some resistance to the trade proposal, they're being cautious, Ben agreed. Given their technology level, they probably have good reasons to be careful about new relationships. What Ben didn't see was Princess Kira standing on a balcony above the gardens, watching their conversation. Her hands gripped the crystal railing as conflicting emotions fought in her mind. 5 years ago, Princess Kira had been conducting a secret survey mission on a mining asteroid in the Outer Rim. The mission was unauthorized. She had wanted to prove herself capable of independent operations. Before accepting a formal role in the military, her scout ship had been damaged by raiders, and she had been forced to crash land in the asteroid's mining tunnels. The crash had left her injured and trapped as toxic gases began filling the tunnel system. Her emergency beacon was damaged, and she knew rescue ships wouldn't find her in time. The mining station's automated systems were failing, and sections of the tunnel were collapsing. That was when she heard footsteps in the darkness. A human engineer working for one of the independent mining crews had detected her ship's crash. Despite the danger and his crew's warnings about getting involved with alien politics, he had crawled through the unstable tunnels to find her. Ben Torres had been 27 then, working as a systems engineer for a small mining operation. When he found the injured Zephyrian in the collapsing tunnel, he didn't think about politics or rewards. He saw someone who needed help. Hey there, he had said, his voice calm despite the dangerous situation. Looks like you're having a rough day. Kira had been barely conscious. Her breathing labored from the toxic gases. Ben had immediately shared his oxygen supply, fitting his spare mask over her face. The human breathing mixture wasn't perfect for Zephyrian physiology, but it was better than the poisonous air in the tunnel. For 18 hours, Ben had stayed with her. He used his engineering tools to shore up the collapsing tunnel, rerouted power to life support systems, and kept her talking to prevent her from losing consciousness. When she grew cold from shock and blood loss, he had covered her with his thermal jacket. Tell me about your home, Ben had said during the long hours of waiting. What's it like? Kira had described Zephyria Prime in halting words, painting pictures of crystal cities and floating palaces. Ben had listened carefully, asking questions that showed genuine interest in her culture. Sounds beautiful, he had said. Maybe someday humans and Zephyrians will be friends, and I'll get to see it. When the Zephyrian rescue ships finally arrived, Ben had quietly disappeared. He hadn't given his name or sought any reward. By the time Kira was stable enough to ask for him, the human had vanished back to whatever mining operation had brought him to the asteroid. Now, 5 years later, Princess Kira stood on her palace balcony, breathing in the scent that had triggered her memory. Humans had a distinctive smell to Zephyrian senses, not unpleasant, but unique. Ben Torres carried that same scent, mixed with the faint traces of metal and machinery that marked him as an engineer. It was impossible. The chances of the same human who had saved her life now standing in her father's court as a diplomatic captain were astronomical. But Zephyrian senses didn't lie. This was the same person. Kira closed her eyes and remembered the sound of Ben's voice in the darkness. The way he had shared his oxygen without hesitation. The warmth of his thermal jacket when hypothermia threatened to take her. He had asked nothing in return and had left without revealing his identity. The problem was that Kira couldn't reveal their connection. Without exposing her own unauthorized mission 5 years ago, her father still didn't know about her secret survey work, and admitting to it now could damage her standing in the court. Worse, it might affect the current diplomatic negotiations if the Zephyrian nobles learned that their princess had once been rescued by a human. But watching Ben interact with the court nobles, seeing the same steady determination that had kept her alive in those collapsing tunnels, Kira felt a conflict growing in her heart. Here was proof of human character that could change everything her people believed about the young species from Earth. The next morning brought formal negotiations. Ben sat with the diplomatic team in a conference room that seemed carved from a single massive gemstone. The walls pulsed with soft light, and water flowed in patterns that somehow enhanced the acoustics. High Regent Thane entered with his advisors, including Princess Kira. Ben noticed that she took a seat where she could observe his face clearly. "Let us discuss your proposal," the High Regent began. "Earth seeks trade agreements and technology exchange. What does Zephyria gain from this arrangement?" Ambassador Liu presented their carefully prepared offer. Earth could provide rare minerals, cultural exchange, and assistance with exploration of distant systems. In return, they hoped to gain access to Zephyrian crystal technology and energy systems. The Zephyrian advisors asked pointed questions. They had clearly researched human history and weren't impressed by what they found. "Your species has a history of conflict," one advisor noted. "Wars, exploitation of weaker groups, environmental destruction. Why should we trust you with our technology?" Ben felt the negotiation slipping away. The Zephyrian concerns were valid. Human history did include dark chapters. That made other species cautious. "You're right to be careful," Ben said, speaking for the first time in the formal session. "Humans have made mistakes. We've learned from them, but we can't erase them. All I can tell you is that the humans here today are committed to peaceful cooperation." "Words are easy to speak," another advisor said coldly. "How do we judge human character when your actions speak differently?" Princess Kira shifted in her seat. Ben saw her hands clench and unclench, as if she was fighting some internal battle. The morning session ended without progress. As the Zephyrian officials filed out, Princess Kira lingered. She approached Ben as he gathered his notes. "Captain Torres," she said quietly, "may I speak with you privately?" Ben looked to Ambassador Liu, who nodded. "Of course, Your Highness." Princess Kira led him to a small garden courtyard where they couldn't be overheard. The sound of flowing water provided privacy from listening devices. "You said this was your first visit to Zephyria Prime," she began. Carefully, "That's correct, but you have worked in the outer systems. Mining operations." Ben nodded, wondering where this conversation was heading. "For several years before joining the diplomatic corps." "Why do you ask?" Princess Kira was silent for a long moment. Ben could see her struggling with some decision. "There was an incident," she said finally. 5 years ago, a mining asteroid in the Kepler sector." Ben felt a chill of recognition. "The asteroid designation?" "Mining Station Gamma 7. The memory hit Ben like a physical blow. 5 years ago, working for Morrison Mining, an emergency beacon in the tunnels. A crashed alien ship and an injured being who had needed help. He had never learned the alien's identity, had never even seen her face clearly in the darkness of the failing tunnel. You, he said quietly. You were the one in the tunnel. Princess Kira nodded, her silver markings seeming to glow brighter with emotion. You saved my life, Ben Torres. And now you sit in my father's court, asking for trust between our peoples. Ben stared at her, understanding flooding through him. The elegant princess standing before him was the same being he had found injured, and alone in those collapsing tunnels. The same person he had shared his oxygen with and covered with his jacket during that long, dangerous night. I never knew, he said. You were hurt. It was dark. I couldn't see clearly, but you helped anyway. You stayed with me for 18 hours, risking your own life in those unstable tunnels. You asked for nothing in return. The weight of the coincidence overwhelmed Ben. Of all the beings in the galaxy, the alien he had once helped in a moment of simple human decency was now the daughter of the ruler, whose trust Earth desperately needed. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Princess Kira looked toward the conference room where the failed negotiations had taken place. Because my father's advisors are asking how to judge human character, she said. And I know the answer to that question. I've seen it firsthand. Princess Kira stared at Ben Torres in the garden courtyard, watching his face process the impossible truth. The human who had crawled through collapsing tunnels to save a stranger 5 years ago now stood before her as Earth's diplomatic representative. The weight of that coincidence felt like destiny pressing down on her shoulders. Your people are asking for trust, Kira said quietly. They want to judge human character. But I have already seen it. Ben ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered from the asteroid tunnels, when he had been thinking through engineering problems. Princess, if you reveal what happened, won't that cause problems for you? You said the mission was unauthorized. The question showed he understood the political complexity of their situation. Kira felt a familiar warmth at his consideration for others. Even when facing his own mission's failure, it might, she admitted. But watching my father's advisors question human trustworthiness while I sit silent feels wrong. I can't ask you to risk your position for Earth's diplomatic goals. You are not asking. I am choosing. They walked back toward the palace as Kira explained the political landscape Ben needed to understand. The Zephyrian High Council consisted of 12 noble houses, each controlling different aspects of their civilization. Trade agreements required approval from at least 8 houses, and currently only 3 supported the human proposal. The problem is historical, Kira explained as they moved through corridors of living crystal. Zephyria has been contacted by 17 different species over the past 2 centuries. 14 of those relationships ended badly when the other species tried to exploit our technology or resources. What happened to the other 3? They proved themselves trustworthy over decades of interaction, but they were much older civilizations with long histories of peaceful contact. Humans are seen as too young and too violent. Ben understood the challenge. Human space exploration had begun less than 2 centuries ago, and their expansion had sometimes been aggressive. Other species had thousands of years of diplomatic experience. The afternoon session resumed in the Great Council chamber. Ben sat with Ambassador Liu and their team while the 12 Zephyrian House leaders took their positions around a circular table made of blue crystal. High Regent Thane occupied the center position, with Princess Kira seated at his right hand. We have reviewed your proposals, announced Lord Commander Zale, leader of the military house. While your offers of rare minerals and exploration assistance have value, we remain concerned about cultural compatibility. Lady Vera of the Technology House spoke next. Human history shows repeated patterns of taking advanced technology and using it for warfare. How do we know this will not happen again? Ambassador Liu responded with carefully prepared arguments about human evolution and peacekeeping efforts. Ben watched the Zephyrian faces and saw skepticism growing rather than diminishing. Perhaps we could establish a trial period, suggested Lord Finn of the Trade House, one of their few supporters. Limited technology exchange with strict monitoring. No, replied Lady Senna of the Diplomatic House firmly. Our previous experiences with trial periods led to espionage and theft. Either we trust completely or not at all. Ben felt the negotiations sliding toward failure. The Zephyrian nobles had clearly decided that humans were too risky as partners. He caught Princess Kira's eye across the chamber and saw her internal struggle. Reflected in her expression, "If I may," Ben said, standing slowly. "I understand your concerns about human character. Our history does include conflicts and mistakes. But history is made up of individual choices, and those choices show who we really are. Individual choices mean nothing," Lord Commander Zale said dismissively. "We judge species by their patterns of behavior across centuries. Then judge us by this," Princess Kira said, rising from her seat. The chamber fell silent. A princess interrupting council deliberations was unusual, and her father looked surprised. "Daughter, what do you mean?" Princess Kira took a deep breath. Ben could see her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to risk everything. 5 years ago, I conducted an unauthorized survey mission to the Outer Rim systems, she began. Several council members gasped at this revelation. My ship was damaged by raiders and crashed on mining station Gamma 7 in the Kepler sector. High Regent Thane's silver markings darkened with anger. "Kira, you never reported this mission. Because it was unauthorized and because I was rescued by someone who asked for nothing in return." She turned to face Ben across the chamber. "Captain Torres was working as an engineer for Morrison Mining. When my ship crashed in the tunnel system, he detected the emergency beacon." Ben stood frozen as every eye in the chamber fixed on him. He had not expected this revelation and wasn't sure how to respond. The tunnels were collapsing and filling with toxic gases. Princess Kira continued. "Captain Torres crawled through unstable passages to reach me, knowing the entire system could collapse at any moment." Lady Vera leaned forward with interest. "What did he want in exchange for this rescue?" "Nothing," Princess Kira said firmly. "He shared his oxygen supply without hesitation. He used his engineering skills to stabilize the tunnels. When I grew cold from blood loss, he covered me with his own thermal protection. For 18 hours, he kept me alive and conscious until Zephyrian rescue ships arrived. And then?" asked Lord Finn. "Then he disappeared. He never gave his name or sought any reward. By the time I was stable enough to ask for him, he had returned to his work as if nothing had happened." The chamber erupted in whispered conversations. Ben saw some council members looking at him with new interest, while others appeared skeptical. Lord Commander Zale stood. "This story, if true, speaks well of one human, but it does not change the behavior patterns of the entire species. Does it not?" Princess Kira challenged. Captain Torres was young then, working a dangerous job for minimal pay. He had every reason to avoid getting involved with an injured alien. His crew warned him about the political complications. Yet he chose to risk his life for a complete stranger. High Regent Thane studied his daughter carefully. "Why did you not report this incident before now?" "Because I was afraid of admitting my unauthorized mission," Princess Kira replied honestly. "But sitting silent while you questioned human character felt like betraying the person who saved my life." Ben found his voice. "Your Highness, if I may speak to what happened that night." "Please do," the High Regent said. Ben looked around the chamber at the alien faces watching him. "Princess Kira was injured and trapped when I found her. I am an engineer, trained to solve problems and help people. Her species or politics never entered my mind. She needed help, and I was able to provide it. You took significant personal risk." Observed Lady Senna. "What motivated this choice?" "My parents taught me that helping others is what humans do," Ben said simply. "Not for reward or recognition, but because it is right. Yet many humans throughout history have not followed this principle." Lord Commander Zale pointed out. "True," Ben agreed. "But many have. Every day, humans risk their lives to help strangers. Firefighters run into burning buildings. Medical personnel work in dangerous areas. Engineers like me fix life support systems in space stations knowing one mistake could be fatal. These actions do not make the news reports you study, but they represent human nature just as much as our conflicts do." Princess Kira stepped forward. "I have studied human history extensively since that night 5 years ago. Yes, there are wars and conflicts, but there are also countless examples of humans helping others at personal cost. They rescue people from natural disasters. They share resources with those in need. They protect the weak even when it brings them no advantage. You speak as an advocate. Lady Vera observed, I speak as someone who has experienced human character personally. Princess Kira replied, Captain Torres had no obligation to help me. He gained nothing from the rescue. He took on enormous risk for someone he had never met and would never see again, or so he thought, added Lord Finn with what might have been amusement. The High Regent raised his hand for silence. Captain Torres, do you remember what my daughter told you about our world during those hours in the tunnel? Ben thought back to that long, dark night. She described the crystal cities and floating palaces. She talked about the beauty of Zephyria Prime and how her people valued harmony. With their environment, she said she hoped someday humans and Zephyrians might be friends, so that others could see her world's beauty. Did you believe such friendship was possible? I hoped it was, Ben said honestly. Your daughter spoke of her people with such pride and love that I wanted to learn more about Zephyrian culture. Princess Kira felt tears threatening to form. She remembered the genuine interest in Ben's voice when he asked about her home. The way he had listened carefully to every detail she shared about her people. Lady Senna stood slowly. Princess Kira, your testimony carries significant weight, but we must consider the broader implications. One act of kindness cannot erase human history. Can it not begin to balance it? Princess Kira asked. We judge species by their actions, but we also judge them by their potential. Captain Torres showed me that humans are capable of selfless courage. If one human possesses this quality, surely others do as well. The princess raises an interesting point, said Lord Finn. Perhaps. We have been focusing too heavily on human conflicts and not enough on human cooperation. Ben watched the debate continue, feeling overwhelmed by the direction the conversation had taken. A simple act of human decency 5 years ago was now being dissected as evidence for the character of his entire species. Lady Vera addressed Ben directly. Captain Torres, if we approve this trade agreement, what assurance do we have that Earth will honor its commitments? The same assurance Princess Kira had that night in the tunnels, Ben replied. You will have to trust that we mean what we say and judge us by our actions over time. Trust must be earned. Lord Commander Zale said firmly. Yes, agreed Princess Kira. And earning begins with a first step. Captain Torres took that step 5 years ago when he chose to help instead of walking away. Earth is taking that step now by sending diplomats instead of warships. The High Regent called for a brief recess, as the council members dispersed into small groups for private discussions. Ben found himself approached by several Zephyrian nobles, who wanted to hear more details about the rescue. Princess Kira joined him, and Ben noticed she looked exhausted from the emotional strain of her revelation. Are you all right? He asked quietly. I will be, she replied. Regardless of the outcome, I am glad the truth is finally spoken. What will happen to you if they discover you have been keeping this secret for 5 years? My father is angry, but he understands why I remained silent. The unauthorized mission was foolish, but my reasons for hiding it were political necessity. And now we wait to see if one human's choice 5 years ago can change the future for both our peoples. When the session resumed, the atmosphere in the chamber had shifted. Ben could sense less hostility from the Zephyrian nobles, though several still appeared unconvinced. High Regent Thane spoke first. We have discussed Princess Kira's testimony and Captain Torres' actions. While impressive, we need broader evidence of human character. Ben's heart sank. But Princess Kira was not finished. Father, if I may request permission to share additional information, speak. Since learning Captain Torres' identity, I have researched his background extensively. His service record shows consistent patterns of helping others. As a mining engineer, he has rescued trapped workers in cave-ins 17 times. He has shared his emergency supplies with stranded travelers on 4 occasions. He has repaired life support systems for colonies that could not afford to pay for his services. Ben stared at her in surprise. How did you learn all that? Diplomatic intelligence has accessed too many records, she replied with a slight smile. The point is that your actions 5 years ago were not unusual for you. They represent a pattern of behavior that extends throughout your life, Lady Senna looked intrigued. Do you have similar information about other members of the Earth delegation? Yes. Ambassador Liu has spent her career preventing conflicts between species. She has negotiated peaceful solutions to border disputes, trade disagreements, and cultural misunderstandings. Her record shows consistent commitment to nonviolent problem-solving, Princess Kira continued, providing examples of humanitarian behavior from each member of the Earth team. Ben realized she had been preparing for this moment since recognizing him. Gathering evidence to support human character claims, impressive, admitted Lord Commander Zale. But these are still individual examples. Then consider this, Princess Kira said. Earth's proposal includes offering disaster relief assistance to any Zephyrian colony that might face natural catastrophes. They are volunteering to help us before we even agree to trade with them. That is true. Confirmed Ambassador Liu. Humanitarian assistance requires no formal agreement. If any Zephyrian settlement faces emergency situations, Earth ships will respond. The offer surprised several council members. Lady Vera asked, "What do you gain from such assistance?" "The opportunity to help," Ben answered, "and the chance to prove that human intentions are genuine." Lord Finn looked thoughtful. "We could test this commitment. Several outer colonies face supply difficulties that could become emergencies. Within the next few months, our ships are already prepared to assist." Ambassador Liu confirmed. High Regent Thane studied the faces around the chamber. "Let us vote. All in favor of approving the trade agreement with Earth?" Ben held his breath as hands rose around the circular table. Lord Finn voted yes immediately, followed by Lady Senna and 3 others. Lady Vera hesitated, then raised her hand as well. 6 votes in favor. More hands rose. 8, 9, 10 votes for approval. Lord Commander Zale and 1 other noble maintained their opposition. But the majority had been achieved. The trade agreement is approved, High Regent Thane announced. Earth and Zephyria will begin formal cooperation. Ben felt relief flood through him. But he also understood that the real work was just beginning. Trust would have to be built through countless small actions over many years. As the session ended and nobles began filing out, Princess Kira approached Ben one final time. "You risked everything to help a stranger 5 years ago," she said. "Today, that choice helped create an alliance between worlds. I never expected anything like this." Ben admitted, "The best choices never do. They are made simply because they are right." 3 months later, Ben stood on the observation deck of the Joint Research Station, being constructed at Mining Station Gamma 7. The same asteroid where he had first met Princess Kira now hosted the first cooperative facility between Earth and Zephyria. Princess Kira joined him at the viewport, watching human and Zephyrian engineers work together on the station's growing crystal structures. "It is beautiful," she said, admiring the way Earth technology blended with Zephyrian crystal growth techniques. "Yes, it is." Ben agreed. "Your father's council made a good decision. They made the only decision they could after understanding what human character truly means." Ben watched a human engineer and a Zephyrian technician work together to install a new communications array. Their cooperation represented the future both species were building together. "Do you think it will work?" he asked. "This alliance between our peoples?" Princess Kira smiled, remembering the question she had asked herself 5 years ago while trapped in the darkness of the failing tunnel. "Yes," she said confidently, "because it is built on the foundation of one human who chose to help when he could have walked away." The research station continued to grow around them, a symbol of what was possible when beings chose trust over fear, cooperation over conflict, and hope over despair.